Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Curse Strings, a Widow's Bay novel by Rebecca Regnier, narrated by Traci Odom. Chapter 1. There was trouble afoot in the form of German potato salad. I walked up to the former moose lodge, and the trouble had a distinct odor. I snuck up as close as I could to the Brain Trust as they pondered the potato salad catastrophe.
"Can we salvage any of it?"
Grand Poobah Philip Lockwood said as he looked at 3 rank-and-file members. They stared back at him with vacant eyes. Oh, wait, was it Governor Poobah Lockwood? I could never keep it straight since the Moose Lodge continued to go through name changes. Whatever official titles they held before their names, in their hands they held a disaster comprised of bad eggs, bad mayo, or just bad mojo.
"We have 37 gallons, and we've tested 3 tubs randomly."
"And?"
Well, Keith, tell the governor your official report."
I followed their gaze, and there was Keith, in considerable discomfort a few feet away. It didn't look like it was going to take long before his taste test led to a full-on system meltdown. His lips were pressed tight into a grimace. I could only imagine the intestinal discomfort of eating something that I could smell from my unobtrusive spot behind a minivan. This was the first tip I'd received from Derek Heisenberg. He was a disgruntled member of the lodge. The source of his frustration stemmed from the fact he had downed vampire blood in hopes of becoming powerful, mysterious, and fit. It hadn't worked, so now he was promising to feed me tips on anything newsworthy happening in his lodge. Today, he'd let me know that planning for the Testicle Festival had hit a potato salad-sized snag. I was there in my capacity as a reporter to get the facts, and to let potential Testicle Festival attendees know that there was something rotten in Denmark, or, well, Michigan in this case. As Keith mustered up the courage to explain that the mustard or something else had gone bad, I presented myself and a list of probing questions. "Mr. Lockwood, can you tell our readers and viewers why there are, by my count, over 30 tubs of potato salad here in the parking lot?"
"Great, just great. So glad to see you, Marzie Nowak. I'm not surprised you got wind of this."
"To be fair, Phil, anyone in a 2-block radius would easily get wind of it."
Steve waved a hand in front of his nose. He wasn't wrong. "For the record?"
"Look, for the record, we have rancid potato salad. It's not murder. You seem to like murder. Why don't you run along and find one of those, sweetheart?"
Grr, sweetheart. "Mr. Lockwood, what's the plan for handling the potato salad? What impact will it have on offerings for festival goers?"
"It's potato salad. We'll double up on baked beans."
"Well, people really do like their potato salad, though."
Steve addressed this comment to Lockwood, who promptly smacked him hard on the shoulder.
"Ow,"
he muttered and rubbed his shoulder. "What's the plan? Will you be canceling the festival?"
"No, things are exactly on target. This is the Testicle Festival, not the Potato Salad Festival, so there's no impact whatsoever. We're serving delicious fried bull testicles. That has not changed. And in terms of financial impact, that is a private matter between anointed members of the lodge, not your or the media's concern."
"Oh, and we've got chicken gizzards, too. Don't forget to put that in the story, too,"
Steve added politely. He was being nice, a rarity when it came to members of the lodge and me. I gave him a thank you smile and then returned to grilling the Poobah, governor. "How can the public be sure that what you serve at the festival meets proper food safety standards?"
"Safety is our #1 priority."
"Will you be throwing out all these tubs to be safe? What caused it? Bad mayo? Improper preparations? Improper food storage? Expired ingredients?" I fired one question after another in hopes of getting enough to use for my story.
"As I said, not all of the potato salad is impacted by this minor inconvenience."
"I heard 6 lodge members got sick after, taste testing."
"As I said, there is nothing to worry about. Things are proceeding beautifully on schedule for the most epic festival ever thrown in the upper Midwest.
So, other than the tainted potato salad, all plans are proceeding as normal?
Please refrain from using the word tainted.
Philip Lockwood was using every fiber of his being not to lose his temper in front of my camera. It was impressive, but also thin. I knew he was sick of me by the veins popping in his neck. But it is.
Listen to me, Marzie Nowak. I know, and you know, exactly what happened here.
Lockwood was red in the face. He was agitated when I'd walked up, but clearly my questions had pushed him over the edge.
Here's exactly what happened. Either the eggs we used were from cursed chickens, which is very, very likely, or the growing presence of your cackling coven or crones caused otherwise good ingredients to curdle, thus ruining gallons and gallons of the best potato salad this side of Illinois.
Excuse me, cursed chickens? Is that what you're saying? For the record? I had no intention of reporting his ridiculous allegations. I knew he hated the Distinguished Ladies Club, and he was happy to place blame at our feet.
Yeah, cursed chickens that you're responsible for. Why don't you put that in your report?
Philip, I will not be reporting on that, and you ought to thank me. It sounds unhinged. Isn't it more likely that the refrigeration failed?
Which is also something to lay directly at the feet of your Distinguished Ladies Club. I would not put it past you to hex our major appliances.
This isn't about the DLC. It's about an update for festival goers. I remained calm in the face of the hex allegation.
I don't have time to waste anymore. All further comments will come through mancave.com. Uperman is the only non-biased, fair, quality news in Chippewa County. You're a hack, and everyone knows you chase murderers and gore since it sells papers. Disgusting.
I stood there flabbergasted at the level of hate Philip Lockwood directed at me and my beloved friends. And Uperman, whose real name was Weston Redmond, was the furthest thing from non-biased. He hated me and the DLC. It was clear from his reports. My calm demeanor started to shake loose. Philip, all the DLC works hard to help Widow's Bay. And even though you don't deserve it, I'm going to leave out your wild stories of cursed poultry or whatever. You sound unhinged.
Yeah, well, see then, making up news as you see fit. How convenient for you.
I took a moment and gathered my thoughts on just what I was going to report. I laid them out for Lockwood so he could dispute what he wanted. I report the facts. Here are the facts as I see them. I turned on my phone and started a live report. Marzie Nowak here for your UP News. New developments this morning for the upcoming Testicle Festival. Approximately 40 gallons of potato salad prepared for the festival appear to have gone rancid overnight. Lodge Governor Philip Lockwood had several theories as to why the side dish went bad, including a bad ingredient or two. Lockwood vows all food will be ready and safe for attendees, which, according to Lockwood, could be in the thousands on the opening day of the first festival celebrating fried cattle testicles in Upper Michigan. Lockwood stood, hands on hips, as I updated viewers for your UP News. I turned and fired off a question. Mr. Lockwood, will you share your plan for a replacement side dish?
You already heard. We're going to have baked beans, and any further comment will be through the true news source of Chippewa County, mancave.news.
Another member jumped through the back of the shot and yelled,
Uperman forever!
I ignored it. We'll bring you updates as the situation develops. Marzie Nowak, your UP News.
More like up your news,
Lockwood added as I turned off the camera. There was nothing more to be done with Lockwood and the lodge. I headed back to my Jeep. Despite the amount of personal animosity Lockwood had for the DLC and me, I knew that I had the story first and accurately. Uperman, Weston Redmond, was going to be second to the party for once, and he was a lodge member. Ha! Take that. My smug feeling was short-lived. I had a sinking feeling. Cursed chickens laying rotten eggs. I mean, my coven had no idea how to curse farm animals. At least I hoped they didn't. We were just learning how to use our wands and brooms. But a part of me worried that Lockwood's wild accusations were spot-on accurate. Chapter 2. The next day, the festival was in full swing, and there were hundreds of people once again in Widow's Bay. This time, instead of sampling of witches and magic, they were getting testicles and gizzards. It was a downgrade in my book, but we had to accept it. The town council had agreed to give the Springtown Festival to the lodge, and that was that. Beltane plans had been supplanted by, a lot of deep-fried meats. The crowds had started to arrive for the 4-day extravaganza, but it hadn't been smooth sailing. Another dispute had broken out, and, no surprise, it was between my coven and the organizers who'd usurped us. I wasn't in the center of it this time. Instead, I attempted to let it play out and cover it for your UP News. As far as I could see, there weren't any vampires or werewolves involved, so I didn't have to do my other job as an early warning system for supernatural chaos. Congressman Ridge, may be an enemy of the DLC, but he was as human as they came.
What the heck is this?
Ridge was not happy. He was waving his arms in the direction of 3 unauthorized booths. Pauline, Georgianne, and Tatum stood defiantly behind the counters of the row they'd set up on Georgianne's stretch of sidewalk, in front of her store, The Broken Spine. These women knew how to throw a community festival. Whether they were sanctioned was not their concern. Ridge was not having it. He'd done his best to take control of Widow's Bay away from the crones and back to his cronies. Well, Georgianne here is selling lovely Widow's Bay postcards and T-shirts. Tatum has her special Widow's Bay brews, and I'm helping Miss Frances with a donut stand. Pauline gave her biggest smile to Ridge. His face was getting redder by the minute. Pauline was being diplomatic, cheerful, and pleasant in the face of Ridge's increasing anger. I hovered on the periphery, wondering if this would rise to the level of a story for your UP News. My friends and business owners believed Ridge had done all he could to cut the Distinguished Ladies Club out of this event. He was the one in charge of issuing permits for who could have a booth and who could not. Technically, the vending booths that Georgianne, Tatum, and Pauline had set up were violating the rules. Day 1 of the Testicle Festival had brought the crowds, but the jury was still out on whether the crowds were happy with the offerings. My stories could turn the tide. If people read it was going well, more would come. If it looked like a disaster, the festival could be dead in the water. I put on my reporter's hat and did my best to be impartial. My own feelings had to stay out of this. Your UP News readers and viewers had gotten used to my reports from Widow's Bay. As much as I wanted to go in there and tell Ridge to calm down, I knew my place. I had to give the readers and viewers both sides of the story. I plowed ahead with my questions. Representative Schutte, I'm live on Facebook for your UP News. Can I get an interview about the festival opening night?
Sure, Miss Nowak. The Pure Liquid Testicle Festival, presented by the Benevolent Independent Order of the Buck, is an unmitigated hit.
Ridge looked into my phone camera and recited that mouthful of a name. Catchy. I've never heard of the Benevolent Independent Order of the Buck. What happened to the moose?
As an organization, the Indigenous Buck more closely represents our commitment to community, fraternity, volunteerism, and wholesome family values. Moose are just kind of big and dumb. Am I right?
Ridge looked into the camera and laughed at his own joke. What about the report that the Widow's Bay Moose chapter was refused entry and that's why you changed?
Miss Nowak, do you really want to focus on the negative, like all the media? Come now. The Pure Liquid Testicle Festival, presented by the Benevolent Independent Order of the Buck, is great for Widow's Bay economy and a wonderful family fun event for our town. Naming rights were generously purchased by Pure Liquid, meaning we're able to keep the cost down for attendees. I knew darn well Ridge and his cronies had swiped Beltane weekend out from under us and replaced it with his more masculine,
culinary event. But it was done. We had to move on, and I had to cover the facts, not stew in my anger that he'd pulled the fast one. "Have you tried it? They taste like chicken." Ridge smiled again into the camera with a fork full of fried, something. "Thank you, Representative Schutte. More coverage from downtown Widows Bay as the festival continues." I was doing all I could not to say the darn name on camera. While Philip Lockwood was ready to lose his cool on camera, at least Ridge understood that, as a public official, it was better to at least try to be reasonable for my news reports. I watched as something caught Ridge's eye. Georgianne, Tatum, and Francis went back to serving customers at their booths, despite Ridge's near-citizen arrest. Ridge, though, had spotted the police chief. It looked like he was going to take his complaint to the next level.
"Chief Marvin, over here, immediately."
I watched as Ridge directed Police Chief Bud Marvin to the 3 booths, operated by my Coven mates.
"These booths are not sanctioned, and I want them torn down immediately."
Ridge Schutte was not Bud Marvin's boss, but Ridge Schutte never let that stop him from ordering anyone around. Marvin hesitated. His boss was Mayor Candy Hitchcock, and certainly she would be against treating Georgianne, Pauline, and Tatum like criminals for operating booths at a community festival. The air felt charged. Every player in this scene was now waiting to see if the chief of police was going to slap the cuffs on Widows Bay's most prominent business owners. "I'd start rolling on that, Marzie." It was a male voice, low but vaguely familiar. It was right in my ear, and I whipped around to see the source. I recognized him immediately, and my hand went up to my hair to smooth it. I had a brief flash of hope that I looked all right. Because it was Garrett DeWitt, my boss, and owner of Your UP News, paying a personal visit to Your UP News Widows Bay Bureau. I quickly grabbed my cell phone camera again and fumbled to unlock the screen. This was getting easier now that spring was making it possible to walk outside without 4 layers of gloves on. 1 layer covered it now that it was May. Yeah, it could get ugly. I was disconcerted to have my boss on the street with me as I did my job. I'd only ever met him through a Skype interview when he hired me. I wondered how long he'd been watching me try to cover this burgeoning conflict. Formal introductions, though, could wait. He was right. Things were heating up here on the streets of Widows Bay. I pointed my camera towards the congressman and police chief. Tatum had left her booth and inserted herself in the discussion. "Listen here, Bud. We don't have to have a permit for a sidewalk sale because that's what this is. You can't control that. Leave us alone, Ridge." Tatum was unencumbered by the niceties required to hold political office.
"That seems like splitting hairs, Tatum."
Bud Marvin rarely featured in my news stories, and I knew he did not like cameras or news reporters. "You're telling me this out-of-towner here with his froofy brews has more of a right to be a vendor here on the streets of my hometown than me?" Tatum pointed to a huge booth on the corner, only a few feet away from Tatum's. It was huge, new, and for sure not locally owned. A sign read, "Tommy T's Good Old Boy Brews." It was lit up like a Christmas tree, and a yellow arrow pointed to the booth for all to see.
"Now, calm down, Ms. McGowan. Every single vendor for the Testicle Festival is required to be permitted."
"I get closer on that woman. She's about to go off," DeWitt said. He had no idea that woman had a wicked temper when crossed, but he could see she was about to blow. I tried to distract him, seeing as I didn't want to report on Tatum losing her cool. There were things DeWitt didn't know about Tatum and the history of this little event. "With all due respect, Mr. DeWitt, that woman is a local business owner, and she's making a point about the way local businesses, specifically 3 women-owned local businesses, were denied access to the main thoroughfare for this event." I'd not meant to get on my own soapbox, but there it was. Still, though, she is looking like she's about to make good, clickable content. Garrett DeWitt used his brow to point back to the unfolding action in the midst of the festival. I think this is a really great example of why I need a photographer. I figured if the big boss was going to be in town, I'd be really stupid to argue with him. What I needed was for him to spend more money on the Widows Bay Bureau of your UP News and get me a photographer. I'll take it under advisement. Now zoom in on that. I think your police chief is about to arrest one of them. Chief Marvin had ushered a now livid Tatum back to her booth. I'm going to let you ladies finish your day. But if I see these booths up tomorrow, you'll all be in cuffs, Chief Marvin pronounced. I burst forward and seized the opportunity to get an interview with the chief. I needed to make a good impression on my boss, after all. Chief Marvin, will you really be arresting vendors? What do you say to the allegation that no women-owned businesses were approved for this event? Miss Nowak, these are questions for politicians. I uphold the laws they pass. And as you can see, there are several women-owned businesses operating as we speak. He turned and walked away from my camera. Fun guy, DeWitt said, and he wasn't wrong. I put my hand out to shake Garrett DeWitt's. Nice to formally meet you. Likewise. Garrett DeWitt was handsome, that was clear. He had a head full of salt and pepper hair and was built like one of those endurance athletes, long, sinewy, and tan, even in Michigan's spring weather. So, how about that photographer? You're persistent, I'll give you that. It's part of my charm. Well, while I consider your request, how about a 10-cent tour of Widows Bay? Your reports have piqued my interest since the moment we brought you on board. I knew he could afford way more than 10 cents, but since I wanted to get on his good side, I decided not to quibble on price. Let's start right here. This is Pauline. She's a real estate agent and fitness instructor and, up until this testicle thing, the preeminent organizer of Widows Bay festivals and fairs. A lot of our town's newfound popularity can be traced back to her. Pauline smiled and extended a hand. Garrett DeWitt, owner of your UP News. He's checking up on me, I said, and Pauline's eyes lit up. If you're looking to buy up here, give me a call. Real estate in this town is a great investment, thanks to the ski lodge and the craft beer scene. Thanks. Yep, I'm persistent, but nothing compared to the crew I run with. I figured it was going to be obvious to Garrett DeWitt that I was friends with half of the town. I worked hard to be unbiased in my reporting, but still, these were my friends, more like sisters. Pauline's helping Frances sell the best pasties in Widows Bay. Hello. Yes, mine are so much better than Dauber's pasties. Secret ingredient, you know, Frances said, and turned to serve a customer lining up for said spectacular treats. I'll have to take her up on it, DeWitt said, eyeing food Frances had on display. For sure. We walked to Georgianne's booth. This is Georgianne. She owns the Broken Spine. Bookshop and deer processing. I had to see that one to believe it. Great combo. Yep, nice to meet you. Georgianne was also busy with customers. As much as Ridge and his cronies tried to keep customers from women-owned businesses, festival attendees gravitated to the good stuff. I did not tell Garrett DeWitt that Georgianne was also head librarian to the enchanted library that was hidden by an ancient spell within her bookstore. I was going to have to walk a tightrope with my boss here, that was no question. And then we made our way to Tatum's stand. Her frog-toe brews were legendary. Along with the ski slope and the town reputation for being home to magical elements, Tatum's brews were right up there in helping to turn our small town tucked in the northernmost part of North America into a hotbed for vacationers. This is Tatum, owner of the Frog Toe. And brewer of the best beer in the Upper Peninsula, Garrett complimented Tatum. She wasn't impressed. That son of a goat, he's undercutting the standard price, and it's Miller Lite, I swear. She was pointing to Tommy T's good old boy brews. I had a vague feeling of dread when I looked over at the beer booth. I wasn't psychic, but I did have the occasional accurate vision. Sorry, everyone's a little busy. Tatum wasn't interested in small talk or impressing my boss. She appeared to be at war.
No, not at all. I'm glad to see there's always something for you to cover.
True. So, do you want a tour of the office? My boss looked incredibly uncomfortable suddenly. The easy demeanor and long-limbed grace was replaced with a tic. He was literally scratching behind his ear like my dog Bubba Smith.
Good. Yes. I'm going to walk a bit. Meet you there in about an hour.
He was ready to get out of the conversation, apparently. Maybe I'd bored him or pushed too hard on the photographer? You know where the office is?
I pay the rent, so yes,
he said with a smile. He looked off into the distance, though, and no longer at me. I didn't quite know what to make of the big boss and his shifting personality. The only other super-rich mogul I knew was Etienne Brûlé. I still didn't quite know what to make of him either, and we were dating. I think. See you later, I said, and DeWitt was gone just as quickly as he'd appeared. I shook it off and assessed what I needed to do next. Maybe some interviews, that could work. But then Tatum left her booth and grabbed my arm. She was serious and at maximum Tatum intensity. Tonight, my place. We have planning to do. Are we sure about this? More than ever, Tatum said, and returned to her beer cart with a steely set to her jaw. Even Aunt Dorothy was on board with what Tatum and the DLC were planning. I wasn't so sure. But for now, I had to cover the news, and the news was the Testicle Festival. I found a few diners enjoying their meals.
Tastes like chicken.
Of course it did. I took my interviews, pictures, and notes back up to the office and filed several stories on the festival. I also made a few beat calls, checking in all over the county to find out what was going on, which was all in a day's work. There was a rap on the door jamb, and I looked up to find Garrett DeWitt again, calm, focused, and checking in on his lone employee in Widow's Bay. He also nearly hit his head on the door jamb when he tried to go through it.
It's a fairly small space. How would you even fit a photographer in here?
Oh, I'd make do. Pauline owns the building.
Ah, okay then.
How long are you planning to stay here in Widow's Bay?
I'll be heading out tomorrow, I think.
I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe if he saw more, he'd agree I could use a staff. Though working side by side with the owner didn't exactly put me in my comfort zone. What if I messed something up? What if he decided a young college kid could do this job for 1/3 the price? Several me-getting-fired scenarios played out in my head. But I made small talk, and fortunately did not get fired, though the day wasn't over. Thankfully, Fawn popped her head into the office, halting the conversation. Hey, you ready? Fawn's long, silky waterfall of hair hung loose, draped over one shoulder. As the town vet, half the time her hair was tied up behind her so as not to get in the way of errant paws or claws. But for a second I saw her through a stranger's eyes, in this case Garrett DeWitt's. I think her quick greeting bowled my boss over. He was staring, and his jaw dropped open. I attempted to make things less weird. Hi, yes. I mean, if you're all set, Mr. DeWitt. I powered down my computer.
Garrett.
He stood up and made a beeline for Fawn and put out his hand. Hi, I'm Fawn.
Another member of your coven.
Clearly he'd done some research on the Widow's Bay Distinguished Ladies Club before his visit. Still, I choked a bit. New acquaintances didn't typically know we were witches, much less acquaintances that signed my paycheck. We've been friends since elementary school. Fawn smiled, and the effect it had on Garrett DeWitt was palpable. All my coven sisters were beautiful, I knew this, but seeing someone new get a little tongue-tied by the fact was fun. My coven had teased me mercilessly about dating Etienne Brûlé. Maybe I'd get a chance to give a little bit back. Where are you staying? I never asked. I stood up and gathered my things.
Sowen Slope Ski Lodge. Rates are pretty good, as they're in the transition season, they said.
Yep, too warm to snow ski, and there's still ice on the lake, so no water skiing.
Got it. Thanks for the tour.
Safe travels back to Sault Ste. Marie, Fawn said as...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?